delighted to be joined today in the studio with Zoe Lyons. Zoe, how are you?
I'm good, thank you.
Lovely to see you.
Very nice to be here.
Tell me the difference between like being funny on television and being funny on a stage.
Well, the stage, I suppose most stand-ups naturally prefer stage because it's much more immediate. You're much more connected to the people in the room.
Okay.
There's always a slight disconnect with television. You know, there's you're mentally in your head playing to the camera.
Yeah.
And so that is that slight disconnect. Whereas if I'm on tour and I'm doing tour shows and I'm on stage and there's an audience right in front of me, that's a very different experience and it's much more immediate.
So I've got to ask. So when you're speaking to a corporate audience then and a club audience, are your expectations different from them? In terms of the reaction?
From a corporate audience? Yeah, I suppose so. I suppose as a comic you've always got to bear in mind that some of the people in the room may never have even been in a comedy club. They might not be familiar with stand-up comedy, you know. When you're in a comedy club, people have made the decision that that's what they're doing that evening, so you know everybody's on board. So it is up to the comic within a corporate environment to really feel the room and really sort of assess the audience and sort of, and be more sensitive, I suppose, to who is in the room and how which way you're going to go with things.
And do you kick off the sets the same way and then kind of adjust accordingly, or have you got?
For me, it all depends on who I'm talking to. If they're a specific industry, and particularly if it's an industry that I know very, very, very little about, I like to kick off with some ridiculous in-depth information about that industry. So they're
Brilliant.
And it's fun for me.
Do you enjoy the research?
Yeah, it's fun for me. Yeah.
So give me a couple of examples. What's the weirdest ones? I shouldn't say weird. What's the most enjoyable, challenging, different ones?
I mean, I have done everything from the Resin Floor Awards. I became very au fait with with levelling out floors. It's
the knowledge you now have, you're an expert at all sorts of things. Fantastic.
Ventilation, you name it. It's been done. It's been done.
And how kind of obviously now the live event has come back. How was it like the virtual?
Challenging. It was challenging, but. I mean, when people first said you're going to be doing stuff online, this is how it's going to work, I was like, in my brain, I went, this is never going to work. Yeah. This is not going to work, you know. I hate to be pessimistic, but I was like, I don't think this is going to. And what was really joyful about that whole experience was discovering that actually, in times of real desperate need and, extreme circumstances, it worked. Yeah. It did work.
Yeah. Well, people needed to laugh.
People needed to laugh and people needed to connect. I mean, it took a little while for us to get the mechanics of it completely right. You know, none of us had even heard of Zoom, had we? You know,
no.
Cameras off, mics off. That was a whole what? You're doing what? You know,
suddenly it's a verb.
Yeah, yeah, and so it took a little while to work out the mechanics of it and what worked best, and having people on screen work best, and being able to see and hear people work best, not just blank cameras or blank mics. And it was so we felt our way through it.
And then when you returned to live, did you have to in person? Did you have to readjust yourself again?
I think most comedians had a real sense of not anxiety, but. There was that being unsure because you hadn't been on a stage for so long, and then everybody I spoke to just went, within seconds you're back in it.
Oh really?
Yeah. It's like a muscle and you're back in it. So it's and it was really nice to be back in it as well. Yeah.
So can I ask a couple of questions? Something I've always been interested in. Like we sometimes get requests for the comedian to sit for dinner, and generally it's not the best thing in the world sitting for dinner. Is there an expectation that kind of, hey, I'm a comedian, therefore you have to constantly be funny, you have to make me laugh, and how do you deal with that?
Yeah. I think personally, a lot of people always assume that you're on, and or that they have to be funny in your company, which is Just
really?
Yes, yeah.
That must be quite.
And they don't.
Yeah.
They don't have to, you know.
Yeah, they could just be.
Yeah. So that can be an interesting sort of dynamic at times. Sort of. Yeah, having to put people at their ease and go, it's fine, we don't need to be funny.
We don't just spend our lives just telling jokes.
I am remarkably miserable when off camera or off stage. You know, it's most comics are actually quite introverted.
Yeah.
And I think that's what people don't understand. And it's so that when you are invited to join for dinner, sometimes when I say no, it's not because I'm not interested in that person. It's because you're dealing with your own mindset before you go on stage.
Yeah.
And I often need just a little bit of peace before I go on, so I can think about what I'm doing.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah.
Can I ask another question along those lines, which is, it's always fascinated me kind of when you talk to comedians about like their development path of kind of how they become a comedian and kind of. Do you believe you're born into being a comedian, or do you believe it's something that kind of...
It's an interesting question, yeah. I feel it was innate in my bones.
Okay.
I feel it was probably what I was meant to do.
Right.
So in that respect, I'm very, very, very lucky in that I've been able to, you know, carve a career in something that I'm A, love, and B, feel like it's my natural fit. Because a lot of people just aren't that fortunate, and I really do feel that I'm doing what I should be doing. But I had to learn how to craft jokes better. I knew I had funny bones. I knew I could make people laugh. I knew I enjoyed being on stage. But the actual crafting of jokes, learning how to do that was different for me. I had to work on that.
So when you hear other comedians on stage, can you just enjoy them, or are you enjoying the art, I suppose?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of comics will stand at the back of a room and go, oh yeah, I've seen what you've done there.
Yeah, really?
Yes.
Does that upset you? It's
what you do. It's what you do. You have to sort of you dissect it. But equally, I can watch people on stage, even really new acts, and go, they're going to make it.
Oh, really?
Yeah, you can see it.
It's just something
you can see it. You can see it, and it's and sometimes again you look at them and you go, the material's not there quite yet. There's something not quite there yet, but you can just see when somebody's got something different.
Last question for you. You mentioned beforehand, like kind of getting your mindset right, kind of before you go off on stage.
Yeah.
Kind of nerves. How do you deal with them? And kind of.
Nerves are good.
Yeah.
Yeah, nerves are good if you can channel them correctly. Then they're essential.
And is that something you just found how you challenge them correctly?
Yes, you have to challenge them correctly. Yeah, you have to channel them correctly. I used to get incredibly when I first started doing stand-up. I used to get incredibly nervous. Some of the clubs I played were really. Should we say challenging back in the day? Yeah. So I used to get incredibly nervous, and now I still get nerves, but I think that's a good thing. I think it just keeps you a bit sharper and on your toes.
And do you get different in different places, in different settings? Would you get?
Yeah. I think over a certain number of people, it doesn't increase any. Like you hit a sort of threshold. Okay. But equally, being in a room of 30 people,
is it more scary if you actually with lower group of people than if
you're more exposed.
If one person doesn't laugh, it's like.
I talked to comics who've played the O2 as part of their tours, you know, and you're going, that's 10,000 people. And it's probably not that much more nerve-wracking than
I can imagine
30 people. I suppose if you split a room and there's 30 people in there, you can see the 15 people that are enjoying.
And they're going to wait if you are.
Yeah, they're very visible. So no, I would get nervous if I wasn't nervous. That's
So on that point, thank you so much indeed. It's been lovely speaking.
Lovely talking to you too.
Cheers.